Hello, everyone. Welcome. Hello, hello. We'll let a few of you get logged in here before we start. If you are so inclined, use the chat and let us know where you're tuning in from. We love to see where people are joining us from. I'm in Seattle, Theo's in London, Emiko's in Italy. And where are you? Tucson, Arizona. Welcome, Teresa. San Jose and Houston, welcome. St. Paul, Boston, Jersey, Bloomington, Minnesota. Okay, this is amazing. There's like no one from Washington yet. Come on, Seattle, where are you? Bellevue, Washington. There we go. Thank you. But this is one of the nicest parts, right? That we have people from all over the place. Boston, originally Brazil, Capitol Hill. Hello, everyone. All right. Seattle. Hi, Carol. All right. It looks like London. Hello, in Seattle. All right. So it looks like we're reaching kind of leveling off a little bit in people tuning in. So I'm going to go ahead and get started with introductions. I'm Lara Hamilton. I have a cookbook shop here in Seattle called Book Larder. And in normal times, we do lots of in-person interviews in our shop. We have a kitchen in the store. So, if we were talking with Emiko and Theo in person, we would have made something from their books to share with you. But that's okay. We would not have been able to welcome so many of you from all over the place, and probably not even welcome both of them at the same time if we weren't able to do this online and via Zoom. So thank you for joining us today. We are talking about Italy and Italian food today with two really fantastic authors that I am just delighted to have with us. We are welcoming Emiko Davies and her re-release of her book Florentine, which has a lovely guide to Florence in it now. So if you are thinking about traveling or armchair traveling, there you go. She also just released an Italian baking book called Torta della Nonna, which is wonderful. And she is going to be in conversation with Theo Randall and this wonderful, look at that cover, new book called The Italian Deli Cookbook, all about cooking from your pantry, perfectly timed for right now. Emiko and Theo are going to chat, and of course, we will take questions as well. If you could please use the little Q&A button at the bottom of your screen, rather than the chat for questions that you would like to ask, that will just make it easier for us to keep track of things. But you can use the chat, of course, to talk to each other. When you're chatting, choose all panelists and attendees from the drop down if you want other people who are tuned in to be able to see what you're saying. All right. The books are, of course, all available on booklarder.com, and I will drop a link to each of them in the chat. And again, just use that Q&A button for your questions. All right. So let's please welcome Emiko Davies and Theo Randall.
Hello.
Hi there.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning in.
So this is very exciting to be here. I think we were just talking about how amazing it is to be in all different places in the world right now, but right here on the screen together. I'm really loving this, actually.
Well, I've loved today. I've been reading your book, and I have to say, I've learned so much. I mean, I know Florence pretty well, but I mean, what you write about, it's just the things, the sort of nooks and crannies that you don't really know about, which I love, and it's the pure Florentine food, which is the authentic food, which I love. I mean, for me, Italian food is about the simplicity and not mucking things around and keeping those traditions. And I mean, living in Florence must be amazing. I mean, that there's markets there are just extraordinary. And I think, I was reading your bit about, that you lived by the seasons, and that must be so wonderful, particularly, now with all the asparagus, and you had the artichokes, a few months ago, and it just must be every day there's something new. And I kind of really miss that. I mean, we're lucky, we do get great vegetables and things in the UK, but you are the epicenter of greatness. What's it like?
Yeah, the seasonality is something that I really learned how to eat by the seasons living in Florence, because it goes even beyond like fruit and vegetables. There's even a season for eating certain baked goods. It's not like,
Yeah,
how hot cross buns, you sort of eat them, not just at Easter anymore. They kind of come out a lot earlier.
yeah,
Well,
exactly.
in Italy, I mean, in Florence in particular, there's, certain things that you only eat for Carnival. So there's like a week, maybe 2 in February where you get to eat that thing and you just gorge yourself on that for those 2 weeks. And then, and then you wait the rest of the year until you can eat it again. I think there's something really, really special about that, because you appreciate those particular foods and those dishes just at that time of year, rather than eating them nonstop all year round. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
I remember going for the first time to the Sant'Ambrogio market, and just
that's my favorite
when you go there, you just it's like a theater. It's like walking onto a set of a film or something. There's so much passion there, and everyone, the nonnas doing their shopping, and they're quite aggressive, and they barge you out the way, and they get what they want, and they haggle, which I love, and it really is. It's very inspiring, and I think that's what's so lovely about the markets. You haven't got lots of, the Italians haven't changed, and they keep their traditions, and that's so important. And food is obviously one of the most important things. They're not supermarkets everywhere or little stores. If you want to buy some good vegetables or good meat and fish, you go to the market. There's no such thing as a supermarket in town, and I think that's what's so lovely. And I love the fact you have it's like a community. You have the restaurants around the market. I remember that I've been going to that restaurant Cibreo, which is a lovely, lovely restaurant, and they have the little kind of the bit next to the market where you can go and get the sort of the real Tuscan food, the ribollita and those sort of things that are just sort of served outside on a little table and chair outside, or you can go to the fancy Cibreo restaurant, which is really grand and it's special occasion. But essentially, it's the same food.
It's all the same food.
Yeah,
In fact, that's something that I think that they do really well there, because you can eat that food. You eat all the same, food essentially from the same kitchen, all the same dishes, all their signature dishes, but you can have it at different price points depending on whether you want to be served in the restaurant or whether you don't mind being perched on the street, in the cafe, or they have a theater as well, across
I know,
the road.
Yeah.
The theater, I love going there for lunch, because then there it's like a buffet style. So you go in and it's just, all these. They especially have like really great, I think, vegetable dishes are really, really good there. And they have those all out sort of buffet style. This was pre-pandemic. Now they have they have a different format, but it's still sort of similar thing. And you pay a set price and you go in there and you sort of serve yourself. And then when the polpette are ready, they yell it out of the kitchen. It's very theatrical. I mean, they are in a theater. It's very theatrical. And they yell out what's ready. The anchovies are ready, or the this and that are ready, and you just go to the window with your plate, to the kitchen. It's really, I really like that, that you can still, it's sort of very democratic. You can choose, what kind of service you want depending on which restaurant you go to, but you're still eating, the same dishes.
But that's what I mean. Tuscan food is such amazing food. I mean, it's funny. There's not that many sort of pasta dishes in Tuscan food, which is quite interesting. And I love all parts of Italy, and particularly love the region of Puglia. But when you go to Tuscany, there's not that many pasta dishes. Lots of soups, lots of beans, lots of meat, lots of arista di maiale. This roasted pork. I absolutely adore that. And but I think it's brilliant. But in your book, when you talk about Giovanni Boccaccia, if I pronounce that right, where you talk about live better, when he says delicate food and very good wines used with care and avoid every luxury is what the sort of diet you need. And I think we're kind of living in those times now, because I think since lockdown, everyone's become very health conscious. Everyone's concerned about how they are. I mean, obviously, maybe we're not drinking as good a wine as we should be, but certainly food is very important. And I think that's that is the essence, I think, of the Tuscan food. It is about simplicity, and there's no sort of class system when it comes to food. Everyone eats the same food, which I love. I remember going to a restaurant in Montalcino, and there was the kind of the sort of the owner of an amazing a guy called Andrea Costanti, brilliant Brunello producer. And, you know, one of his guys who picks the grapes was in this little trattoria eating. And he's sort of, I just think that's so nice, the way that there isn't any of that kind of snobism about eating and who eats in restaurants, which we do have here in London. But you know, that it's a great cuisine for everyone. And cucina povero is the sort of food that everyone wants to eat, and it makes so much sense. It is all about seasonality and kind of living off the land.
Yeah, exactly. Because when you have, I mean, I think this is what Tuscany does really well, because it is such a simple, you know, everything's sort of essential and bare almost, you know, no fancy sauces. There's no, you know, not a lot of messing about with things, as you mentioned. And I think that because it is so simple, you really are relying on just that really good vegetable to begin with, or that really good piece of meat. It really has to be in season, you know, not just some soggy thing at the bottom of your fridge that's out of season and has flown somewhere. It's just got to be something you've picked up right then at the market. And then you do something really, really simple with it, like just olive oil, or just, you know, and that quote that you read is from the Middle Ages, but it is still, it's so relevant to Florentine cooking even today. And I do think that that's just, it's a really beautiful way to cook if you can, you know, visit the market every morning, you know, or every other morning, or when you have time and you just pick up only what you need for that, you know, for those couple of days. There's something very, very nice about eating that way. And that's something that I've learnt a lot about doing since living in Florence.
Well, I mean, you're lucky. Everything's on your doorstep. You can just go and, you know, go get. I mean, when I was doing my book, I had to kind of compile a list of delis all around the world, and I kind of left out the whole of Italy, because there's no point. I mean, in Italy, they've got everything. I mean, like the little corner shop's going to sell the most incredible, you know, salted anchovies or olives, or, you know, pasta. And the supermarket has aisles and aisles and aisles of amazing pasta. You know, so there's no point. But you know, you talked about olive oil. I mean, there's nothing like the olive oil you get in Tuscany. It's quite unique and quite different to oils. I mean, you know, you get oil from southern Italy and it's a different variety, but the oil in Tuscany is quite unique. And that thing of having the grilled, you know, the classic bistecca fiorentina, and just pouring a bit of olive oil on top, and you kind of trying to explain that to someone is quite difficult. You have to, I always say to any of the chefs that come and work for me, you know, if they're not Italian, a lot of them are Italian, but if they, you know, you have to go to Italy to taste Italian food to really understand it, because it is that thing of having that pasta or having that risotto and tasting, you know, the bite to it and the simplicity of it and the size of the portion and the fact that it's hot and it's kind of eaten really quickly. It tastes amazing, you know. The same with a piece of meat. The meat is a little bit of salt, a little bit of oil, and it's grilled and it's charred and it's slightly raw in the middle, but the meat quality is so good. And then you pour that thick green olive oil on top and you eat that steak, and it's just incredible, you know. And you don't need to have vegetables and things with it. You just can eat just the meat, you know.
No, and you don't need sauce, because it's already that, just the olive oil with like the, you know, the juices coming from, that's all you need. But do you think like, do you find that maybe really good olive oil is, so maybe it's difficult to get, or it's a little bit more expensive or a little bit too expensive, and people tend to hoard it in their pantry and not actually use it? Because I've seen that. I think that's the problem, is that in Tuscany you only have new season olive oil. There's no such thing as making olive oil last even, you know, even past a couple of months. You eat it right away, you drizzle it on everything, you have that season's olive oil, and then, you know, you're done with it and you have to wait, you know, till the next season olive oil. Whereas I think because it's so maybe so expensive or so sort of special, people tend to like conserve it and put a little drop that maybe, you know, keep it in their pantry for too long, and then they've missed their, you know, they've missed the opportunity to, I don't know. Well, have you seen that sort of happen?
No, it's the bane of my life. I'm always telling people, you know, just eat the olive oil, have it now. And that is thing of like having this beautiful bottle. I mean, people go on holiday and they go to the market in Florence, and they buy a bottle of this olive oil and they put it on their windowsill, and they go, oh, it's lovely, this olive oil. I only use it for special occasions, you know. And then, you know, 6 months later, it's gone rancid because the sunlight's killed the oil. and you
Yeah.
can't even use it, and I think that's a thing of and when you go to Italy, and it doesn't matter what part, whether it's southern or northern Italy, olive oil is such a major part of cooking. And apart from Emilia Romagna, I think olive oil is used there, but they use a lot of butter and more butter there. But I think particularly Tuscany, they have that oil, they use it in lots of things, and then if it's last season, they'll just use it for cooking or something else.
Exactly.
It's not, but when you do taste really good olive oil, there's nothing like it. I remember going to Dario Cecchini's place in Panzano, which is an amazing theatrical event, and he does this thing with the beefsteak of Fiorentina and his panzanese, these different cuts of meat, and they do that dish. I'm probably pronouncing it wrong, but pizzaminio with the raw vegetables and the olive oil.
Yeah, the pinzimonio.
Pizzimonio, that's it.
Yeah.
And that is, kind of the perfect thing just to eat before a steak, because you've actually got some sort of vegetable in you before you eat a kilo of meat.
It's the thing that I do that with my kids now when they're really, really hungry and they're waiting for dinner to be cooked. I just put like a plate of raw vegetables and sticks on them, and they'll eat all of that. It's the same thing. The pinzimonio is basically that. It's raw vegetable sticks. You dip them in some olive oil and you just sort of eat them, and then all you need is your steak after that, and you've got all the food groups.
That's what's so wonderful about the Tuscan diet is actually, even though it seems really heavy, but it's very good for your digestion. I mean, all those beans, the soup ribollita has got to be the best soup in the world. I mean, that thing of cooking the sofrito for a long time and adding the beans. I noticed in your cookbook you put pancetta in there, which is lovely, kind of gives it that sort of body. And then, using yesterday's bread or a few day old bread to sort of cook into the soup. And when you cook with, a bread like a proper sourdough sort of bread, or really thick country bread, it just becomes a different thing altogether. Actually, when you cook it, it comes almost, it's slightly sort of creamy, and you get that amazing texture. And when you add the olive oil, it all just makes perfect sense. I mean, whoever came up with the recipe of ribollita, it's just the absolute genius, because it's just using everything. And I guess, it's, I think that thing of cucina povera, it fills you up. It's just having that olive oil and then having the beans and the cavolo nero, and it's everything you want in a soup. I could eat it all day.
Tuscans are really good at using bread. You wouldn't ever throw a bread away in Tuscany.
No.
It's always it's literally, it comes from, because it used to be blessed. Each loaf of bread used to be blessed, so it would have been literally blasphemous to throw away bread. But it's used in almost every meal basically. But the way of cooking that bread in soups, like ribollita, as you were saying, but also in Papal Pomodoro. And Papal Pomodoro is another one of those dishes where you can either cook. There are those who cook the bread for a long time in the pot with the tomatoes. So it's basically this bread and tomato soup, for anyone who doesn't know Papal Pomodoro. And the word papa is the same word that you would use to describe baby food, right? So it's like, it's a mush, basically. Yeah. But it comes from the word papare in Italian, which means to gobble. So you can kind of get a sense of, like pappardelle, the pasta. Yeah. It's something you gobble up, right? But it's also, papa also means a mush, or like like similar baby food type of consistency, which doesn't sound that appealing. But then when you cook the bread through it, it has that amazing sort of consistency. It becomes quite creamy, it becomes very thick, and it is so filling. I can almost never get through an entire bowl of Papal Pomodoro because it's so filling. But there's another way to cook it too, where you cook the tomato and then you put the bread in at the end when the tomato's already done, and you take it off the heat. You just put the lid on and let the bread sort of soak up all of this like tomato soup, and then you just stir it at the end with a spoon, and it still comes to this like really creamy papa that you gobble up with a bit of olive oil, obviously.
But what I love about Tuscan food is also that it never really changes. I mean, even you have the summer minestrone, or the summer ribollita, or the summer Papal Pomodoro, and then they do it in the winter as well, because they might preserve the tomatoes, or they might dry the beans for the soups. And it's quite interesting that it's one sort of season, but it's kind of celebrated throughout the year with all the produce that they keep. I mean, I love that bit in your book about the porcini. Actually, I think it was on your Instagram account, about porcini risotto. And how you're very wary of porcini risotto, because so many restaurants they buy the maggoty, which is always difficult when you're buying porcini mushrooms. You generally do get a lot of maggots.
It's hit and miss. How you sometimes don't know, you know. Yeah.
And you know that sort of vegetarian risotto is no longer vegetarian. But yeah, no, I think that was brilliant. But you know, I guess it's that thing of sort of living off the land that's so unique. And I just mention that thing about preserving. You know, there's so many things that are kept. I mean, you look at all the, you know, the pig, for instance. You know, all the salami that you get from the pig, and then you have, you know, the olive oil, which you obviously eat new seasons. Then you have the beans, you have the dried porcini mushrooms, all these things which are just like, you know, it's very artisan. It's very artistic to sort of do all these things. And I remember going to a few places and seeing some of these people, and they're you know, just a regular family, and they're downstairs, their cellar is just full of it, like this Aladdin's cave of amazing things. You know, salamis and sausages that they've made that are hanging and drying, and then like little sort of jars of vegetables that they preserved, and might be some peas and things like that. And I guess it's just a modern day, like it's like having a freezer full of food, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, my mother-in-law grew up with her, so they didn't have a garden or pigs or do anything like that. But even something as simple as you were talking about the tomatoes. So when, you know, before the fridge was widely used, they used to get tomatoes, sort of late season cherry tomatoes. There are particular varieties that have really thick skin. And they normally come from southern Italy. And these little there are cherry tomatoes with a little point at the bottom of them. And you get them around sort of September, around the time of the wine harvest, the grape harvest. And you keep them, they used to keep them in the attic and hang them on a little nail. And those tomatoes can stay like that, fresh, until Christmas. That was the idea.
Wow,
so you would get these tomatoes, hang, you know, so I've seen them in Puglia as well, because they do. My mother-in-law's father was from Puglia. They do this. They put these tomatoes, string them all up on the ceilings, you know, hanging from the ceiling. And it was a way to preserve fresh, you know, nice fruit or vegetables until, you know, the first winter months. I think that's,
I mean, imagine that just rubbed on a bit of bread. I mean, just a bit of grilled bread, a bruschetta with some olive oil. It sort of gives you a smile in freezing cold November.
Yes, yeah, exactly. That was one of the things that they would all look forward to, you know, sort of breaking open at Christmas.
There was one of your recipes that I kind of just brought me back to Tuscany, but to Florence many years ago, and that was the insalata di carciofi. You know, the artichoke salad, the thinly sliced artichokes. And I remember going to this restaurant. I can't remember the name of it or where it was, but it was this restaurant, and it was a little trattoria. And the friend of mine was with said, "You must order this." The waiter came up with this little kind of table and a chopping board, and he had these artichokes in the basket, and he prepared the artichokes in front of us, and he peeled them and scooped out the choke, which was tiny anyway because they were such fresh new artichokes. And he just this incredibly sharp knife, and with such skill, just shaved this artichoke, this raw, young, new season's artichoke, and absolutely perfectly on this plate. And then he got some Parmesan cheese and he put some olive oil, a little bit of lemon juice, and a bit of black pepper and salt on top of the artichoke. I'm salivating talking about this. And then he got the Parmesan and then shaved the Parmesan on top. And it was, I mean, it's so simple, but it was one of the most delicious things I've eaten. I can still remember it, you know, and I've recreated it, but you just can't recreate those things sometimes. And
if you don't, it's because the artichoke, you need that particular variety and that new artichoke.
Yeah,
that's really hard to replicate outside of Florence or outside of Italy.
Out of Italy, and I think that's what I love about Italian food. If anyone says to me, I haven't got an Italian bone in my body, but I love Italian food because of that. Because they have they're so passionate, and they keep things so simple, but it's doing things at the right time. And you know, less is more is probably describes Italian food more than any cuisine. but it's that thing of just getting it just right every time. And it's that little touch as well. You have to have that touch of Italian food. You can't sort of be sort of like a robot. You have to kind of feel it. And that's what I love about it. And, you know, particularly with making pasta and all these things, you have to feel it. And yeah, so.
You would love the markets right now, because right now is peak artichoke time. This is a really beautiful time actually at the market, and it is sort of a crossover of the end of winter and the beginning of spring, and so there are just I would say crates and crates and crates and crates of artichokes right now. And then there are like, there's maybe one crate of fava beans, or there's, you know, one crate of let's say the last of the blood oranges, but then there's just, then next to them it's just crate artichokes.
Fantastic.
It's great. Yeah, I love this time. They're practically giving them away.
I'm going to be, I can't go tomorrow, but I'd love to do that. Another thing I love, I'm sure, I don't know if they're in season now, and that's bruscondoli, which is the little hop shoots, which you tend to get from around the Veneto, around Verona.
Yes.
But do you get those in Florence?
So we don't have them here, and I've always been keen to like see them and look out for them, but I have never seen them in Florence or in any of the Tuscan markets that I've gone to. But it's funny because some things that were really hard to get here maybe 10 years ago or even 5 years ago, you can now find in the market quite easily, like at Sant'Ambrogio market, for example. They now sell things like lampascioni, which are from Puglia, and they're wild hyacinth bulbs. They look like little baby onions. And that's something that I think is quite amazing that you can now find. Or trying to think, even Cimidirapa was something that used to be impossible to get, and now I think because regional Italian food is becoming so popular within Italy as well, people want to make pasta with Cimidirapa, everybody wants to make cacio e pepe, you know, so no matter which region you are in now, people are curious to make, you know, all the classics of all of the regions. So things like Cimidirapa are much easier to find, and the lampascioni. But bruscandoli I haven't seen yet. That is something that is really still, I think, very much in the Veneto.
Yeah, I mean, and that's what another thing I love about Italian food is the fact that it is so regional. And, you know, I kind of asked, like, so I kind of knew what the answer would be, because, you know, it's so everything is, you know, like you go to the wine shop as well, the Enoteca, you know, and it'll be only wines from that region, and they'll be talking about how wonderful these wines are. They, you know, where you are, it's going to be the Chiantis and the Brunellos and those ones, and it'll be the most incredible selection of those wines. And you go down south, you go to Puglia, and they won't even think about putting a Chianti on the shelf, you know, and that's what I quite like about it. Italy is still 20 different countries, all kind of like, you know, having almost their own sort of cuisine, and I guess it's changing obviously, and people are more thinking about, well, the health advantages of eating more vegetables. I mean, that's the thing about going to, you know, southern Italy. You seem to eat much more. There are more vegetables eaten there, I guess, because of the land and what's being grown.
I think of southern Italy as like the vegetable patch of Italy. You know, I mean, we do get lots of great vegetables in Tuscany that are native, have been growing here for centuries. You know, like all the legumes and the lots of greens. You know, that's why Florentine dishes are, you know, like I want to say things like, I don't know, eggs Florentine. You know, that's always with something green. It's got spinach in it. So greens are particularly Tuscan. But I think when you think of all of those like summer vegetables, you know, like eggplants and peppers and tomatoes, they definitely all come from the south, and a lot of the even here in Tuscany, a lot of those come from southern Italy. It's like the vegetable patch.
and when you go shopping, I mean, it must be kind of fun. I mean, you must have like your favorite places to go to. I think it becomes like an outing, doesn't it? I guess you sort of get up in the morning, you have your little coffee, you have your little brioche, and then you go off to go to the shops. You don't go to the shops, you go to the market, and you kind of, I guess it might, I mean, with your young kids, your husband who's a sommelier, I understand.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, it's just perfect, absolutely perfect. It must be so like, it must be so much. I mean, your children are having such a great food education. I was lucky as a child. My parents used to go on these, my father's an architect, my mother's an artist, and we used to go on these amazing holidays through France and Italy, and we'd go and visit these museums and these amazing houses, and and I find it intensely boring. But my two sisters were kind of really into it, and food was always my thing. My mum's a brilliant cook, so I kind of got in with that. And so, but it must be lovely for your kids experiencing this and living in. I mean, obviously, they're never going to forget it, but it's going to be such an important part of their growing up, of living, in Florence. It must be. I mean, I can't imagine what it's like on a Saturday morning, getting up and going off, and just having the whole day out. It must be great fun.
Yeah, I hope so. My eldest daughter is actually a little bit picky. She's always been like a really picky eater, which I was devastated by at the beginning, because I'm never been picky about any good food, there's nothing I won't eat, in terms of like fruits or vegetables or anything. I will try everything and anything, and so one of the ways I tried to encourage her, because I want her to have a really good relationship with food. And I mean, like you were just saying, the market where we are, we're surrounded by so many great food experiences, is I just drag her into the kitchen with me. So she loves cooking. She loves being part of all of the action in the kitchen. She doesn't always try everything, and she doesn't always eat everything, but I think that that's going to come later, if she can get the experiences now, and she knows how to prepare an artichoke. She knows, how to recognize certain fruit and vegetables that I think, some adults wouldn't necessarily recognize. And I did actually take her with me to a frantoio, which I think is when you were talking about olive oil before, I think that's my top food experience. One of the top 3 food experiences was visiting a frantoio, which is the olive oil mill, with a friend who we had just picked some of the olives from her tree. She only had a few. So basically, when you don't have like a big olive grove and you've only got a few trees to do, you take the olives down to the local communal frantoio, and according to the weight of the olives, you put them through, and then you get, a sort of an equivalent weight of olive oil to take home. So it may not be the oil just from your olives, but it's a communal thing, and it's a really, really beautiful thing to be able to just pick a couple of crates of olives and take them down and then come away with some bottles of olive oil. So we did that one year with the kids, and picked the olives, took them down, watched all the machines, and that in itself was really great. Like there was just sort of 2 old elderly men running the whole thing and watching all the machines go, and then at the end you have this like stream of bright green olive oil that comes out, and into the container that that will eventually go into a bottle, and then you take that home. And the guy looking after the machines just said to my little girl, Mariu, go on, stick your finger under there.
How sweet.
She got to stick her finger. I mean, I was so tempted. Could I do that too?
Can I do as well?
And she literally got to just like taste it right out of coming out of the machine, the olive oil. So thankfully, olive oil is something that she loves and really appreciates, good olive oil. But, that experience, I think, has got to be one of the best things I think anyone can do if they ever come to Tuscany and you're able to get into a communal frantoio. It's a really great experience. I've
experienced something like that, and it was in Chianti Rufana, in a winery called Selva Piana, and we were taken down there by the owner, and they were doing their olives, and it was the old style press. I mean, everything's all mechanical, and it's like trying to get the olives to, because they were trying to make it obviously not oxidized, so the oil's as green as possible. And they had these mats, these like, I mean, I think they were even made of straw or something. They might have been made of plastic, I'm not sure, but they put the paste on these mats, and then there was a sort of couple put on top, and then a mat, and then they just built this thing up. and I'd never seen oil pressed before. And I remember the one thing I remember was the smell, that kind of smell of the olives.
It's the best.
It almost, it's like everything bits, your senses get sort of excited by it. And it's not going to smell like olives. It's just got this incredible kind of grassy sort of green smell.
Yeah.
And they put this into this thing and they pressed it down, and out came this liquid. And then I remember this sort of beautiful stainless steel centrifuge, and they just put it through the centrifuge, and the kind of dirty olive oil went one way and this bright green kind of liquid went the other. And it was just being put in these huge, great sort of demijohn. And it was just, the smell of it was incredible. Anyway, in this frantoia, they had a little fire going, and these ladies were grilling bruschetta.
Yes,
and the smell
we did that too.
And the smell of that the kind of the smokiness with the olive oil, and then having this bruschetta and the oil on top, and it was just like sort of pouring down your face. It was just the most incredible thing. But what I love about it is they keep every single drop. Not a drop is wasted. And I've got Italians in my kitchen in my restaurant in London, and whenever we buy sort of big 5-litre tins of oil, and you can see this sort of tin of oil sort of, they'll leave it there to make sure every drop of oil is out of that tin, because it's sort of, it's liquid gold, I suppose, and it's sort of part of the culture.
It is. You wouldn't want to waste any of it at all.
No, but I love that. Yeah.
Have you ever seen? So you mentioned that you love Puglia, and I wonder, have you ever seen the frantoi in Puglia? Because they are absolutely fascinating. They're underground because of their heat.
I haven't.
It's very hot. It's very hot in the summer in Puglia, and even during the olive season, it's still it's warm. They have them all underground, and they used to bring the animals underground too, because the olives used to be pressed by donkeys carrying making the
churning
what are they called, the mills. Having them go around, and those are absolutely fascinating. There are some really, really beautiful ones. Gallipoli, for example, the town of Gallipoli, which is on the sea.
I love Gallipoli.
Yeah, it's so beautiful.
Those prawns, the red prawns you get.
Yes.
I mean, I mean, they're those things that are just they're basically these incredible prawns. They're so red. I mean, they're like almost crimson. And I can't remember the restaurant, but there's a restaurant there. They all do, all the restaurants in the waterfront, but they do this thing where they literally put the prawns into water for like 2 seconds, just to get the skin to sort of come off. And then they put the prawns on top of ice, and you pick up the prawn when it's just come out, and the ice sort of cools it down, but it's still raw inside. But you eat like 3 of them and you're absolutely full. I mean, they're so rich. But those prawns from Gallipoli, incredible.
They're very sweet and very creamy. You don't even cook them. They're just delicious as they are raw. Amazing. Yeah, Gallipoli is full of underground olive oil mills. It's amazing because it's an island. And so that also is like mind-blowing to me. And then underneath it's full of these subterranean olive oil mills. Absolutely fascinating. Next time you go, you should look.
I will, but also Puglia is full of olive trees. I mean, everywhere you go, it's just olive trees everywhere. And I love you have the sea, you have the olive trees, and then you have where everyone lives. It's kind of quite clever the way they've done it. But I love that part. So I mean, there's so many nice recipes in your book. I mean, I love your insalata di faro. That's one of my favorite kind of salads. I think it's one of those things that you get all over Italy, or certain parts of Italy. I guess it's very much a summery thing. But I mean, talking about Puglia, there's a place we go on a kind of summer holiday, just near the town of Ostuni, and it's right on the sea. There's a beach there, and there's a little kind of hut, and they sell all local stuff. Everything's sort of grown locally, and they do an insalata di faro, and you get this sort of paper bowl, and the insalata di faro is just like the most delicious thing in the world. It's just the faro, tomatoes, zucchini, and just olive oil, and it's just a few little herbs, and it's just the most wonderful thing. And I noticed your ones, it was quite more elaborate, and I guess you can really go to town with the recipe like that.
I mean, you could really put anything that you want in it, but for me, insalata di faro is like my ultimate summer dish, because it's got so many, you know, it's a salad. You've got lots and lots of vegetables. You put everything seasonal that you want in it. I quite like, you know, sort of crunchy vegetables in there too, raw vegetables. So I like to put things like celery and carrots, or, you know, if you, it's kind of like whatever you have in the fridge at the time as well. So I you know, olives or capers, or, you know, something else in there if I want to beef it up, you know, maybe some tinned tuna or something like that. But that's a really popular dish that a lot of cafes or even restaurants will offer in Florence, particularly in the summertime, because it's so refreshing, and because you can eat it cold. You can prepare it at night when, like, it's not too hot to cook. Tuscany is just so hot in the summertime and so humid. So cooking, I only do like in the dead of night and not during the day. So I can cook the feta at nighttime and then stick it in the fridge. And then, you know, you've got all the vegetables in there. It's just, yeah, really refreshing summery dish. The perfect thing also for taking to the beach, which is why I think it's really popular in places like Puglia, or here in Tuscany. It's like the salad that you would take, you know, for a picnic on the beach.
Going to the beach is one of the best things. Is seeing the Italians on the beach is hilarious. I mean, everyone crowds next to each other. The whole family's there. The grandmother's got the kind of grandchildren climbing all over them. Everyone's eating the whole day, whether it's you know, the watermelon, or whether it's some pasta in some cold pasta inside the faro, or focaccia. You know, it's the whole event is just brilliant to watch. I love watching Italians and living their lives. It's such a brilliant thing.
Yeah.
While you're talking about recipes, Emiko, there's a question about how you organized your book and how you selected what recipes to include.
Okay, so for Florentine, I wanted the book to be like a trip if you were walking through Florence, basically. So, you know, the chapters are arranged by like the pastry shop, which is where I normally start my day. I get coffee in the pastry, you know, and then the market and the butcher, so, or the forno, the bakery. So there's the idea was I wanted to include all of those things that you find when you're in Florence that tell the story of Florence through the food. So that, you know, when you flip through that book, you wouldn't see anything there that you don't actually immediately connect with Florence. You know, for me, that was like the number one thing. It had to tell the story of Florence. And so as you walk through the chapters, you know, which are actually places in Florence, my thought was to include those most classic things that you find and that really have some kind of a connection to Florence. There are some things that I think you would find in other places in Tuscany as well, but that have a particular, for me anyway, a particular connection to Florence. And there are also some things that you may not find in here, and you might go, where is that? I don't know, that one dish. So I tried to fill in those gaps in my and another book that I wrote, my third book, which is Tortellini at Midnight, and there's a Tuscany chapter. And because those are those are really family recipes, some of those dishes are the dishes that you really find at home. Whereas in Florentine, I have a trattoria chapter, so that would be like the typical things that you see, you know, in a trattoria. Yeah, it was hard, but it was also easy in a way, because as we were saying at the beginning, Tuscan food is quite simple, and the kind of food that you find in a trattoria is often the same food that you're eating at home. And as you go from like one trattoria to another, you'll find that they all have the same menu. You know, yeah. Tuscans like to eat what they like to eat, and so they're eating the same thing out at a restaurant that their nonna makes fantastically at home, or their mother makes, you know. But those are the most classic dishes. So in a way that was sort of easy, and it was just a matter of sort of narrowing them down to you know, the ones that I thought were really Florentine.
But I mean, the trattoria is definitely the kind of place where you get the real Italian food. I mean, there are lots of restaurants now in Italy, the sort of 2-3 Michelin star restaurants, which are amazing, and they're kind of giving people that experience of doing something a little bit, it's sort of almost taking things apart and kind of recreating them. And there's, Massimo Bottura is probably the best at that, and taking dishes from, his region of Emilia Romagna and using the best balsamic vinegar, the best Parmesan, all those wonderful things, but then kind of, recreating it in a kind of grand setting and making it quite different. But essentially, you're kind of recreating the food that you want to cook at home, which I think is interesting, but I'd rather eat the food that you cook at home. I mean, I think some of those places that you go to and you get like, they are really good, the trattoria, they're really cooking amazing food. And there is someone in their kitchen, a nonna or someone who just knows how to cook. You can't beat that. And that might be a risotto, might be a simple plate of pappardelle or something, but just that kind of food is, it might be the sort of food people would cook at home, but in some ways, if you go to a restaurant like that, you almost want it to be taste even better than you cook at home.
Yeah, for me, when I'm traveling around, even just around Tuscany, or trying out a new restaurant or something, for me, the places, especially when I'm traveling though, what I want is a trattoria. I want to taste like the most down to earth, the most homely meal. It's like being able to eat in somebody's home, which is, where you really get a taste of what things should be like. And it's always disappointing when you go to a place actually that is, for example, when you go to the seaside in Tuscany, in and there, especially I want to say in a place that's like really, really popular with Italians, but often what you'll find is lots of restaurants that have, let's say, like a really sort of standard menu, but not the typical things that you would eat there, because they're trying to please the clientele that have come, for the beach, that might want to eat things that they like eating when they're at the beach, so everybody's got these sort of pan-Italian, pasta allo scoglio or something, but not the typical dishes. So for me, that was really, that was like, that's really disappointing when I go somewhere and I realize this is not what I want to be eating. I want to try like your nonna's dish.
I think the problem is you're spoiled. That's the problem.
I know.
I think if you're living where you live, I think you just have a certain standard, and if that standard doesn't meet you, then nothing's good enough. But yeah, I can imagine that.
I just want your nonna to come out here and cook for me.
Yeah, but do you cook at home a lot? I mean, when I'm thinking about the cookbook, I'm cooking at home, cooking for my children, who are quite big now. But it was always kind of those little kind of things that you recreate something. You think, oh, that's a really good idea, or is it very much, going with the kind of classic dishes that you see in the trattorias, or cooking from the markets? I mean, Florentine, there's recipes in there which are just like absolutely spot on, and how it should be cooked.
I'm a more traditional person. I mean, I want to taste and try cooking or replicating the same dishes that I've tasted in the most traditional way I can find. So that's one of the reasons why I love historical cookbooks so much. I often look at it really, the older the better, the old cookbooks, looking at how those are done, to try to find like the most traditional tastes and flavors, and then I try and stick to to that, to sort of respect those dishes. There's usually a reason why there is a particular combination of ingredients, and a lot of that is the regionality, or because of the location and what is around in that place. Sure. And so that to me, that's sort of how that dish tells the story of a place, even a town, or a village, or a mountain, or a wherever it happens to be in Italy. That's one of the things I love about Italy so much, about the regional food here. So I really try to stay true to that. That would be sort of the first and foremost thing. I think we cook a lot at home, but I like to eat and try all of the really most traditional dishes.
And you got Japanese heritage. Do you like? I mean, obviously, must love Japanese food.
Japanese food is my comfort food, and
Yeah.
my mum is Japanese, and she's a great cook. And whenever I'm feeling a little bit homesick or a little bit tired, or just a little bit, not I don't know, not quite right. For
Yeah.
me, that's Japanese food is the comfort food that I usually crave. So I often make Japanese food for my kids too, and think they love it. So that's like also our go-to is sort of something Japanese usually.
Now, in your latest book, there's a dish that I just love the sound of. Panettone, panettone, is that it?
Panettone, yeah.
Panettone, and that just is just like the most delicious thing in the world. So there's
Yeah.
chocolate, nuts, fruit.
Figs.
I mean, it's like almost like a fridge cake almost. Is it? It's like panforte kind of mix. Yeah, I mean,
yeah,
how'd you make it?
It's really different. So the first time I had it was when so we used to live in southern Tuscany on Monte Argentario, which is a gem, and most people don't know about it, and that's also what makes it a gem. And we were on Giglio Island, which is a tiny little island that you can only get to from Monte Argentario. And at the local bakery there, they had these little buns. So in some parts of Monte Argentario, they make them. A pagnotella is literally like a loaf of bread. So it's like a loaf. A pagnotta is a loaf, and it looks sort of the similar size and shapes of a loaf of bread. But this bakery was doing them in like these little bun size ones. And I remember taking a bite and going, oh my God, it was like fruit cake and brownie had just like met. And it's full of dried figs and sultanas. So you basically cook the figs down until they are like a pulp. And when you have this like sort of fig pulp, you add some spices, you add chocolate and wine, and then you add flour, and you just make it. It doesn't have eggs in it, there's no butter, so it's not really cakey. It is sort of more like it's not exactly a bread, but the flour is really the thing that's holding it together. And then you bake it, but it's quite soft because of all of the dried fruit in it. And then you have that sort of chocolatey flavor. So yeah, figgy brownie is kind of the sort of similar in terms of like the flavor and maybe the texture because it's so soft, but it's really, really interesting. So they say that it was like a local adaptation of panforte because Giglio Island was invaded by Turkish army in the 1500s, and all of the inhabitants were taken away from Giglio and made slaves. And after Giglio was important because the whole island is made of granite, and a lot of buildings in Italy are made of granite as well. So Giglio is really important. So the Medici family repopulated the island with people from Siena, and Siena had a really important baking tradition, which was panforte. And so they say that that this pagnotella was basically a form of panforte that they were able to make using some local ingredients like figs and things. The chocolate, I imagine, is a new thing that they added.
Yeah,
because it's really good. It's really good with the chocolate. But yeah, for the most part, there is some sort of similarity, like the dried fruit and the spices, and there's some nuts in there too. You can put almonds or hazelnuts in there. Yeah, it's delicious.
So, I guess it's something you can make and keep because it's got so much storage. Yes. It just lasts for ages.
It lasts for ages, and it's one of those like fruitcake. The longer you can keep it, the more delicious it is. Like it matures, it gets better.
My mother's Scottish, and when we were kids, she'd always make Dundee cake, which is there's like kind of pounds and pounds of fruit in it, and it wouldn't actually last more than a few days because we'd eat it, but it had the potential.
Yeah,
so do I. Yeah, and I love Italian food, but I'm an Englishman at heart. A cup of tea and a nice slice of fruit cake, can't beat it.
I'm with you on the cake and tea.
Brilliant.
We have a question from Janet, who is making Theo's Italian sausage and radicchio risotto from his new book. But she just wonders if either of you have tips on cooking great risotto. Like, what are your things you always make sure you do to make sure you get great results?
Well, I mean, the classic thing for making risotto is to make sure you fry the rice. So, you know, you do the celery. I use a little bit of celery and onion, very finely sliced, and then always cook the rice. Start the rice off with olive oil, and cook that for about 5 minutes. Because what you want to do is you want the risotto rice to cook from the inside outwards. If you don't fry the rice at the beginning, the risotto rice will cook on the outside inwards. You end up with this sort of horrible rice pudding. And, you know, make sure you've got nice stock. Can be any kind of stock, vegetable stock, chicken stock, but always stir continuously with a wooden spoon and cook on a sort of, you know, moderate to high heat. Don't cook on a low heat. I find it's better. And then right at the very end, when you've sort of made the risotto and you've got all the seasonings in there, give it a really, really good stir. Add your bit of butter and parmesan if it requires it, and then I always put a lid on top and let the rice sort of almost kind of steam in the let it kind of sit there, and you get this amazing amount of starch will come out. It'll be absolutely gorgeous because that's what it's all about. It's all about the starch.
I'm getting hungry. it's. I mean, I don't know what time. Lara, it must be like nearly your lunchtime, but
exactly.
Yeah,
And
it's like 8 p.m. here, and I'm ready for dinner.
Yeah.
Like, when am I
so
getting
good.
artichokes at the market? When am I? And I have to say, I love our farmers markets all year round, but we are in that like dead zone. I think you probably are a little bit too, Theo, where it's like potatoes and kale and whatever. So hearing you talk about artichokes, I'm like, I would love to know, like, what are each of you just like really excited about doing when you can leave your homes and perhaps even your countries again? Like, what are you most looking forward to doing, cooking, eating, whatever it might be?
Well, I would. I mean, I'm sorry. Well, I mean, obviously, going to Italy would be lovely. that would be nice. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, for me, it's been, you know, I've been busy with lots of things, and, you know, we restarted the restaurant back in July, and then we had an amazing few months, and then we had to close down. And that's been very frustrating for me and the team. And so, you know, really looking forward to starting back in May and getting back to kind of a bit of normality and, you know, doing what we do best, which is, you know, running restaurants and kitchens and yeah, just sort of feeling a bit normal, because, you know, it's all this thing has been pretty awful, and I think it's time that we the sooner we get back to some sort of reality and get back to life. I don't think we're going to be able to travel much this year from the UK, but I'm looking forward to that time when we can, you know, I can come out to Italy and eat some great Italian food.
Yeah, dip your finger underneath the olive oil spout, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm really missing the sea, actually. Florence is slightly inland, and we have been in sort of a really strict no travel even outside of your municipality. So we aren't even allowed to go, you know, from here where I am. I'm 30 minutes from the sea. I can't see the sea. We're not allowed to travel. So that's something I'm really looking forward to, just going to the seaside, even just staying within Tuscany, you know, not having to go out. But as soon as we are allowed out, I do want to go to Venice. I'm really missing Venice. Oh, yeah. And Venice is the subject of the book I'm working on right now. So I have, like, I'm really itching to get there, especially speaking of artichokes. They have a very, very short season for these really special artichokes in Venice that you can only get. They're grown in the lagoon, and they're called castraore. A bit of a tongue twister, but they're very, very small. They're the little sort of tiny artichokes, baby artichokes that get cut off the plant so that the rest of the plant can sort of flourish and turn into bigger artichokes. Yeah. But they're a real specialty, and there's a very short season. I'm like really hoping I can get there in time before I don't see them anymore. And yeah, and then as soon as we can, I want to go see my family in Australia. But I think that's off the.
That's
I don't
that's
think-
gonna be
I don't
next year, I think.
Yeah.
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 Those little artichokes, are they? I'm obsessed by artichokes. That's
Yes.
probably can know. But are they like? Do you pickle those ones? Do you like?
So they
how they cook?
eat them. They actually eat them raw, like pinsimona,
Okay.
like we do here.
Yeah.
You would just eat them raw here. I mean, in Venice, or you could fry them as well.
Okay.
But I think the best way to appreciate them is just eat them raw. Whereas in
Yeah.
Tuscany, you can get these beautiful baby artichokes, and those
Yeah.
are pickled. Like on the coast in Tuscany, you often find those little ones, and those are delicious pickled.
In Sotolio.
Sottolio, yes,
Yeah.
delicious.
Love that.
Yeah.
Gorgeous.
Yeah. All right. I'm ready for lunch now for sure. Unfortunately, I think I'll probably be like eating leftovers, but there we go. That's locked down. All right. You have 2 wonderful books plus Torta della Nonna. I don't have enough hands to hold up all of the great food.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Emiko and Theo,
Thank
for being
you.
here today.
Pleasure.
I really
Thank
appreciate
you.
taking the time, and congratulations to both of you on your books. They're really, really wonderful. And I think like all 3 of them just sort of go together so well, which I just, so great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Oh, no, thank you. And thank you everyone for joining us today. We recorded this conversation and we will post it to our YouTube channel. Everyone will get a link to that afterwards if you want to watch it again or share it with friends. Thank you, everyone. Please stay safe and healthy. And I hope that we all get to see each other in person sooner rather than later. Thanks a lot, everyone.
Yes, thank you.
Lovely weekend.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.